Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time. And Rabbi, today we're going to begin a two-part series that we wanted to talk about the power of words. And mentioned to you that by the time that these podcasts will be aired, that we'll be entering into the fifth of the five books of the Torah, the book of Devarim, which the word Devar, I have to tell you, things, words, subjects. So I think it's a really apt time for us to talk about words. And today we're going to talk about a big word in the Jewish world at the moment, and that's the word Zionism, and whether or not we ought to consider retiring the word Zionism, even if that's possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a big one. I mean, I think it's also worth mentioning that we're about to go into the 3-week period from the 17th of Tammuz to Tisha B'Av.
Yes.
And these moments are important on the Jewish historical calendar because that's when the walls of Jerusalem were infiltrated thousands of years ago.
Yes.
And by the 9th of Av, then the temple was destroyed.
Yeah.
And we also say that one of the reasons that the temple was destroyed is because of our words, because of our inability to control the things that we say to one another.
Right. That's great. And today of our taping, we're actually recording this on the 17th of Tammuz, and it's also the thousandth anniversary, the 1,000 days since October the 7th. And so there's a lot of heavy feelings today in both the secular and the religious Jewish world. So let's talk about this. I actually want to start with an anecdote. Last night, I mentioned to you I went to go watch the U.S. Soccer game, and my daughter and I went to this little park outside of Cortland, and we drove by just outside of 9A a deli, and it's called Zio's Deli, Z-I-O, or Zio's Deli. And my daughter and I sort of chuckled to my daughter about this because Zio, which I'm sure is a lovely Italian name for which it's based, can be read as Zio, and Zio has become a shorthand slur for younger anti-Israel, people younger with anti-Israel sentiment. Oh, no Zios allowed, it'll say on university campuses. So, sorry, that's where I was coming from. And so I read this, and I'm like, oh, I bet the owner of that place didn't realize what he was in for when he named it that. Because the word Zio or the word Zionism has become so betrayed in such a negative light, has become so, I would say, misappropriated over time. And so here's what I want to talk to you about today. The argument that I would like to make for retiring the word Zionism is not out of a sense of weakness. That is, I'm not here to make the argument that the word Zionism has become so bastardized and has become so toxic in our vocabulary that we ought to get rid of the word altogether because we've lost its meaning, and those who wish to portray it in a certain light have succeeded in that, and so we should give up on the word Zionism altogether. Right? Which there are some who would make that argument. For example, I think the statistics are something like 2/3 of American Jews, if you ask them if you are a Zionist, will say no. But if you ask if you ask the same exact people, do you believe that Jews have a right to self-determination within their ancestral homeland? It's something like 90% say yes.
Yeah.
It's so, which is the definition of Zionism, but is so unknown, or again is so misinformed throughout our community. The argument I'd like to make is that the word Zionism is a word for an 18th, really 19th century and early 20th century political movement, which was geared towards creating a state, for a homeland for the Jewish people, ideally, but not necessarily in the land of Israel. And that once Israel was established 77 years ago, that the word Zionism really lost its meaning because it achieved its goals. It is now victim to its own success. And to still use the word Zionism is to welcome a argument about whether Israel should exist after it already does. And is it actually a greater sense of strength for us to completely remove ourselves from using the word Zionism because it is a settled debate that does not deserve to be litigated any further. How does that land on you?
I'm surprised that this is your approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, I think that we've had discussions about when we change terminology because then those who don't identify as such are uncomfortable with it. We're kind of giving in to the bullying
Mm-hmm.
of that moment, and instead of wearing it with a badge of honor or with maybe an asterisk by it,
Mm-hmm.
we're saying no. Let's redefine it altogether. I'm not saying that I'm not for that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying I'm surprised that that's your starting point. I'm curious, what would be the alternative? What is the alternative ideology that is being that you're offering? What is the terminology that would be used for that?
What I'm suggesting is that there is no terminology because that would force those who would call themselves these days anti-Zionist to basically say that uh, a existing successful state ought to be wiped off the face of the earth. That we don't need to entertain this debate. We don't talk about, around the same time that Israel is created, countries like Pakistan, Poland, Hungary are created. And no one says, are you pro-Hungary? Are you pro-Pakistan? Right? Those countries just exist. And so I don't think that we have to use the word Zionist these days at all because it exists. It's a country. And so I no longer have to argue for the merit by which Israel should exist. It does exist. And anyone who argues against is calling openly for the destruction of a country that was created through a UN charter. And I think outs them for the prejudice and the bigotry which they hold.
I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I mean, I'm Israeli,
Mm-hmm.
like I have an Israeli passport, and I'm American. I was raised as a Zionist, old school Zionist, like the term before we're deciding to redefine it. Um, and I've been thinking a lot about where I stand in terms of how I present myself as Zionist, because I think um, when you call yourself a Zionist in the diasporic world at the moment, as you said, it has a lot of connotations. People make certain assumptions about you, make certain political assumptions about you, maybe certain religious assumptions about you. They assume that maybe you're conservative, maybe you align with certain values of the Bibi Netanyahu government.
Right.
And so I've had a really hard time with the title Zionism for a long time, even though I am a staunch Zionist, because I think that Zionism is not one thing. It's an umbrella term for so many different elements of what it means to believe in the state of Israel. I don't think
Really? Because I would just say that it's the belief that Jews have a right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland. Period. I don't really know what else gets anything added to that is added externally, I would say, as disinformation.
No, I'm talking about the conversation that I have. If I call myself a Zionist and somebody else who um, perhaps is proponent of the Ben Gvir kind of extreme right, they call themselves a Zionist. I think that we both want the state of Israel exists, but I think we have different visions of what that looks like.
Right, but also you and let's say Pete Hegseth might both be proud, patriotic Americans, and you have different ideas of what that should look like.
Absolutely. And so what I'm saying is that I've been thinking a lot about that term lately because I don't want people to I want people to make the assumption that I believe that Israel has the right to exist when I call myself a Zionist. Obviously, duh. On the other hand, I don't want people to make certain assumptions about me and my political opinions and what I think Israel should look like. Because I think that part of this issue and part of why anti-Zionism exists is there's a lack of nuance in how people can identify and determine who they are and what they are. People assume that Zionism is one thing, and you're going to say no, it is one thing. But I think that there's a lot of colors of what it means to be a Zionist.
Right. So don't you think that taking the word out altogether, that pokes a hole, that forces people then to encounter what they're really saying? Because if basically the term Zionism is a catch-all boogeyman for all of the things you can label on top of it of racism, of ethno state, of chauvinism, whatever it might be, then you're just creating a word that can mean anything that you want it to be. Um,
I mean,
Again,
isn't that what all words are?
absolutely. Well, for example, the word genocide used to mean something very specific, and now the word genocide has been so bastardized that I forget her name, the woman who won the Democratic primary for Washington Heights area, Chevalier, I think is her last name. She was talking about her district and saying that the homeless issue in her district is a modern genocide. That just shows how meaningless the word genocide has become if you can talk about what is certainly a terrible situation, but is not the intentional mass killing in order to wipe out an entire people. So the
Yeah.
word genocide has already, I would say, within the academic world, lost all meaning. And if people want to try the same exact strategy when it comes to Zionism, I would say that even outside of that, why are we even litigating the subject? Why do I would say to you, Rabbi, are you a women's suffragist? Do you think that women should have the right to vote?
I
Now,
know what it means. Yes.
right, yeah, I know, of course, but I mean, like no one argues about this
Yeah.
anymore. And you don't have to say, and I'm Rabbi Londy, and I want you to know that I'm a women's suffragist. Like, duh, of course, like this happens. So when we use the word Zionist, it's to say that there is an alternative, and that alternative is something other than calling for the annihilation or erasure of a modern state.
So I was sharing this with you offline, and I'll share a little bit of this here. Um, I had some interesting encounters over the past few weeks,
Mhm.
and with people who identify as anti-Zionist Jews. Um, I was I happened to meet them in a social setting, and they self-identified as anti-Zionist, and I was like, "Oh, this is great,"
Mhm.
because I
You and I have very different reactions.
well, it's great because I wanted to understand what the heck they were talking about.
Uh-huh.
I don't think that they know what they're talking about. And
Right.
I said, can you please? And I
Yes.
very quickly identified as a Zionist. I said, I'm Israeli. I'm a Zionist.
Mhm.
I'm a very liberal person in my Zionist. I'm very critical of the state of Israel in so many ways, but I am an Israeli and I'm proud of it. I believe that the state of Israel should and needs to exist for the safety of the Jewish people, period. End of sentence. Now tell me what you believe. And so they started stuttering.
Of course.
And they were saying we don't believe in genocide, and we believe that Palestinians deserve human rights, and we believe that Israel has lost an element of its democracy, and blah blah, all these things that they said. I said, so what you're telling me right now is that you're really just a liberal Zionist.
Mhm.
I said, do you believe that Israel has a right to exist or not to exist? I mean, I got a little aggressive.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't think Israel should be wiped off the map. I said, then why are you an anti-Zionist? Why are you identifying as that? I understand that you are critical of Israel. I understand that you might think that some of the behaviors of Israel over the past few years have been disturbing. We can debate that. We can talk about that. But to be a part of a movement that calls for the destruction of the state of Israel as a Jew is so disturbing. And we got to the end of it was a very respectful discussion. We got to the end of the discussion, and I said, I just want you to think about the way that you're presenting yourself as Jews. I don't think that you don't believe in Israel. I think you think that Israel needs to do better and needs to work harder. And you want to be a part of this conversation, but you've removed yourself from this conversation.
All right.
So I said, like, what is this doing for us? What is this? What is putting ourselves in different camps doing for us? And besides for creating more fracture amongst the Jews, which will ultimately lead to our demise. And so I'm on both sides of this because I don't want to give up the word Zionism because I find power in it. On the one hand,
Mhm.
on the other hand, I understand what you mean. Like, why should we? It's to even have this fight is to give legitimacy to something that shouldn't have legitimacy.
Right. It's starting on the back foot. It's when you have this conversation with this person, having to give your bona fides as I'm a Zionist. But this means
Yes.
also X, Y, and Z, which have nothing to do with whether it's not someone a Zionist. I would just say I'm a Zionist. I don't believe that current existing countries should be destroyed or wiped off the face of the earth. I don't
Yeah.
love what Iran's government does. I don't love what North Korea's government does. I would never call for that country's destruction. I would never call for the removal of the people who live there to be somewhere else. And so just as a decent human being living in the modern world, I think that countries should be allowed to continue existing on. And there is no such thing as such a pariah state that it can be altruistic to call for their destruction.
I
Right? Period.
agree with you.
And like, so why are we even talking about Zionism then? It's done. It's almost like you probably are I'm sure you're well familiar with, there's a famous midrash about the creation of the world, and the different angels come before God and they argue about why the world should or should not. And truth says that humanity will lie and will go against one another, create wars. And after the back and forth, God throws like truth down to the ground and says, "See, it's already done. I've already done this thing. Basically, that I've decided, and I'm going to. I think that creating humanity is worth so much that I don't need to listen to what you have to say about this." Israel's done. It's already happened. It's a country. You may not like all of its policies, but it exists. It has borders. It has a government. It has policies.
It has civilians.
It has civilians. It has trash collectors. It has, highways and train systems and all of the things that we like. It's a regular country. And you may not like it. It may not be your favorite country, but I don't have to give you the benefit of arguing why it should remain in existence. Just like I don't think that anyone should. I don't think that Afghanistan should have to, argue why Afghanistan deserves to continue being Afghanistan. It's just a country. And I think that that's kind of one of my bigger messages I would say when I've been speaking to people about Israel. We're just talking about a country. You've created such a boogeyman, such this dystopian nightmare, and that you think that this actually, like, let's even say that the world decided that Israel shouldn't exist. What would happen then? Like, what's the next step? Right? So all the Brooklyn co-ops start to boycott, and Israel says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We're here." So what happens? Are we talking about nuking the inhabitants? Are we talking about a forced displacement of the 7 million Jews who live there and forcibly moving them? I don't know where and who's going to take them. I mean, I think that it just calls into question the absurdity of the argument. Like, what are you actually saying when you say that you're an anti-Zionist? And I don't think that we should have to set the table by being, "Oh, I'm a Zionist. Oh, but I'm a good Zionist. Here's all the reasons why." Like, no, the Zionist Ben Gvir, I don't agree with him on a lot of things. He's an ardent Zionist.
I'd say
He
he's
is.
not a Zionist.
Okay, but that's based on policy. You think that what he's doing fundamentally are taking away from the legitimacy of the Israeli, from Israel as a country.
Yeah, they do.
But he probably feels the same way about you.
Probably.
So
I don't think,
and there are Americans who would probably feel the same way about us
I
too.
don't think I'm being apologetic when I start with what.
No, I think you should be as unapologetic to this person you're speaking to as you are to Ben Gvir. I don't think you should have to sit there and
you know what?
choose yourself.
I think that's interesting, and I've also been thinking about that. Like, what about me? We're not in therapy right now, but what about me? No, what about me?
What about you?
What about me makes me want to find legitimacy amongst this group, and I don't care what the other group says. And I think that one of the issues of this moment is that, and one of the reasons that I think Jews of the progressive wing have been so homeless in this moment, is because I think that we agree on a lot of the issues that those people, a lot of the other issues that those people are proponents of. And all of a sudden, like, the core part of our identity you find to be abhorrent. And that's a really hard place to be when when there's no space for when the intersectionality puts you at risk. And I know we've talked about this. This is not a new discussion, but as I've said to our viewers, to our listeners, sometimes I'm late to the game and things. And I feel really, really deeply lately that, oh, I agree with you on this issue, this social issue and this political issue and this economic issue. But why do I have to apologize for my Judaism? Why do I have to apologize for my Zionism? Why do I have to apologize for being Israeli? I don't. But then where do I find myself? And so you're already like in a post-Zionist world, which I appreciate. I wish I could be there.
Yes.
But I'm in a reclaiming of my Zionism moment.
And praise to you on that one. I think we've all got our journey to make, right? I think that if you were speaking to someone who calls themselves an anti-Zionist because of their criticism of Israel, I think that they would probably be very surprised to hear about some of the incredible liberal aspects, progressive aspects of Israeli society and economy that are far more progressive than what we find in the U.S. That if you look at much of Israeli domestic policy, it lines up much closer with Bernie Sanders than it does with
Absolutely.
with Trump, and there's no idea of this whatsoever. But I guess you're right. I sort of am, in my eyes, over having to explain for Israel's existence, and that if that's something that someone feels as though is still an issue for them, I get it, and good for that. And I understand there's the counter argument as well. The counter argument is to say that, well, these sort of voices create movements, and these movements create politicians. These politicians create policy, and that this is going to influence American policy vis-a-vis Israel. And so we do need to be in these debates. We can't just give up on them, and especially in a moment in which, on the far, far left, hatred of Israel is no longer a bug, it's the feature. It is the one thing that unites people on the far, far left. The initial calling card. When Scott Wiener, the representative in San Francisco, who I knew when I was back in San Francisco, gets shouted down in Dolores Park, 2 blocks from where I used to live. You were great on all of these things, but because of Gaza, we hate you. Right? Is to say that Israel has become not a issue, it is the issue for the far, far left. And you cannot, even if you are sufficiently progressive on every other issue, unless you denounce Israel, you cannot be in the club.
No, unless you use a certain formula.
No, he used the formula.
Yeah.
He bent at the knee and said, "Fine, we'll call it genocide." He gave them what they wanted, and that still wasn't enough, right? So in that case, why do I have to subject myself to the masses? And why do I mean, Scott Wiener, in my eyes, sold himself out long ago, and now is sort of is the reckoning is coming. But I don't need to um, try to convince people that a country that is 77 years old still has to beg for its legitimacy. It's there. You might not like it, but it's a country. So like move on with your life and deal with it. Unless you're honestly gonna straight-faced argue for the active destruction and the forced removal of 7 million people. If you can sit there with a straight face and say that, then that's on you.
Mic drop.
No, I don't mean that as a mic drop.
No,
I mean that as
no,
it's like I'm over it.
Good for you.
Well,
No. I'm processing it because you and I have different starting points. I mean, I've talked about this and I'll say it again. One of the reasons I had to leave Israel is because it was hard to be there and because it broke my heart in a lot of ways. And it's taken me, I knew I had to, and this is a Jewish motif of having to leave a place in order to long for it, in order to yearn for it. So I had to leave Israel to want to love it again. And I didn't realize that leaving would be 2.5 months before October 7th. I didn't realize that the entire world would go on a crusade against the place that I was having a personal reckoning with.
Yes.
And so part of my personal reckoning with being Israeli and with loving Israel and with yearning for Israel and longing and wanting to return in some different way to Israel is about figuring out what it means to me. And what we've talked about many times is that the internal conversation and the external conversation cannot always be the same. It's not safe to always have the conversation about my critique of Israel is not always safe to have with those outside of the bubble, which is unfortunate. And so now I'm in a moment where I think I have a fully formed Zionist identity again. I miss Israel. I love Israel. I believe in Israel. But now I want to advocate for the Israel that I know exists and can exist. And I think at first I was intimidated by this moment. I was like, well, what can I even say to anti-Zionists? Like, they're critical of things that I'm sometimes critical about. And then like that was an aha moment. No, this is an opportune moment because I have a voice to express to them that what they framed as standing up for the underdog, they're really part of a political movement in Israel that believes something so inherently the same, to stand up for those who need to be stood up for, to promote democratic values. I mean, They're basically reform Israeli Jews who are standing up to the establishment and hoping to form Israel into a moral, ethical, wonderful society that it is and knows how to continue to be. And so I'm using this moment of rediscovering and loving Israel again, and loving. I've always loved Israel, but loving Israel like in a proactive way, not in a reactive way. Um, to I think just to spread that message of Israel's all the things that you're claiming it's not. No, it is it's all those, it's wonderful. It's all those democratic values, it's all those progressive values, it's all those welfare state values. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And yeah, it has problems. Yeah, it needs your support to make it better.
So I guess my challenge to you would be that it sounds to me like you are very comfortable making criticisms of American policy without having to provide any sort of a pretext about, but you think that America should nevertheless exist. And yet, when you make your critiques about Israel policy, you feel the need to explain yourself as a Zionist beforehand. And I guess I'm asking why,
Oh, I love that question.
right? Like,
Yeah, I love that
that
question.
makes you the most Zionist. Like, I care so much about this country. I believe in it so deeply. I want to be the very best that I want it to be. And here are the policies that Israel is currently pursuing, which I find to be anathema to the dream of Israel, or Israel as described in in Israel's independence.
So I'm happy that you asked that question because it's two part. Number one, I actually don't feel a need to defend Israel. I start every conversation with people saying I'm Israeli and I'm unapologetic about
Yeah.
it. And Israel exists. And the reason that I'm a liberal and a progressive in the way that I am is because Israel raised me to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
It raised me to love people. It raised
Right.
me to love people who are different from me. I've never had more exposure to difference than in Israel.
Right.
Period. It's a multicultural, wonderful society in that way. Okay, so I don't apologize for Israel. Um, I'm I'm happy that you're asking me that because I think that sometimes when we're part of a collective conversation, we want to make sure that our voice resonates in that conversation. We don't want to say something that is going to get us canceled from the conversation altogether. On the one hand, on the other hand, you don't want to be the token victim and
Mm-hmm.
like speak audaciously against whatever it is as a response to try to fit into that. And so I think that I'm learning to reclaim that voice in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't think it's apologetic, even though you saying that makes me think that maybe there is some apologetics in that.
Or how it at least appears to people when you feel like you have to give a preamble before you talk about Israeli policy.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, when I left Israel, and this really feels kind of serendipitous that we're talking about it right now. I left Israel on Tisha B'Av. I
Mm-hmm.
left Israel on the 9th of Av.
Wow.
Yeah, weird. Um, the day, it's a fast day, it's a day of destruction. I remember that year people were in the streets saying like we're gonna have another, people felt a premonition, a
Oh,
political
it was
premonition.
definitely, there was the entire year before October the 7th, people were speaking about that there was something brewing, that the fact that the IDF had moved so many of the resources into the West Bank and had left Gaza so unprotected, and that Israel's enemies were watching Israelis pull each other apart over
Yeah,
judicial reform,
yeah.
that it was a fitting distraction and a good time to attack Israel. This was talked
It
about
was talked
ad
about,
nauseum.
and I, a personal story. I lived about a 15-minute walk from the protests, and I remember the night before we left Israel. It wasn't an exodus; it was a planned exit, but it felt. I remember I felt a need to like make pilgrimage to that
Mm-hmm.
protest because it wasn't like the weekly protest; it was daily protests.
Mm-hmm.
The streets were on fire, and I walk 15 minutes from my house, and I there's there's tires burning on the street, um, and people are standing with signs saying like this is the 9th of Av. We are bringing our own destruction. We are a fractured people, and we are going to bring the end to ourselves. And I remember like feeling just the biblical imagery of that just resonating so deeply within me, and also feeling a sense of betrayal and leaving Israel in that moment. Like, this is what other Jews have done. They've left at this moment of destruction,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to stay. And I don't know if we're past that or in that or where we are in that cycle right now, but like from the destruction, this is a motif in Judaism, from the destruction, there's always a rise. There's always a renaissance.
Yeah.
There's a renewed sense of hope and belief in something. We hope something fertile comes out of it. And so I think that this moment is really that. I'm not just talking about my own personal journey and reclaiming a clear sense of my Zionism, but I also think that as a Jewish people, it's so important that we're having these conversations. It's so important that there's one side and another side, and that we're debating one another. What I'm scared of is what does this look like in the future? It's important to have these debates, but like, are we going to be two people? Are we going to be endlessly fractured? Can we find a conversation? Can we understand that maybe we're all hoping for the same thing and working for the same thing? I don't know. I don't know if we are working for the same thing. I think that I think that it does bring me clarity in kind of the way that you've had in this conversation. We don't need to apologize for something that exists and it's not going away.
Right. Or I guess part of my calculation is that when someone is claims to be an anti-Zionist, I think it's more to their detriment than to Israel's. That is that if the masses all fall prey to the little Iranian PR misinformation machine in their pocket,
Yeah.
and all of the garbage that it spews, that eventually that's basically taking a toll on their critical thinking and of their just believing
Yeah.
every AI image and such that they see online. And that if all of the co-ops and all of Brooklyn such all become all start boycotting Israel, Israel over the past 2 years, its economy is through the roof. Its stock market is through the roof. Our former congregant here, Bill Ackman, of Twitter fame, unfortunately, after October the 7th, invested significant amounts and has reaped billions of profits off of investing in Israel after October the 7th. That if someone speaks to me as an anti-Zionist, it's almost like instead of being upset with them, I just kind of feel sorry for them at a certain point of saying that, oh, I'm sorry that you've succumbed to the PR machine that makes Israel into this boogeyman, and Israel's going to be just fine without you because it's already there.
I don't know. It's just a PR machine. I think it's more than PR. I think it's an ideological movement. And I think that you're right. Like, people think that they're so critical in their thinking that the opposite has happened.
Absolutely. Oh, and I think that it's like when a bar mitzvah student or bar mitzvah student comes in and says, I don't want to come bar mitzvah, I don't believe in God. And then the standard response for me this is to say, describe to me the God that you reject,
Mm.
because I bet that I probably reject that God too, right? When someone says I'm an anti-Zionist, you can sit with them just as you didn't say, describe for me the Israel that you are against and why, and what people will end up saying, everything that they hang on Israel is everything that they hang on themselves in their own country. If you've been taught that racism is the worst thing and genocide is the worst thing and nationalism is the worst thing, then right, the best Israel just becomes the template to hang all of those vices and all of that scorn upon. And I'm sorry if you feel like Israel for you is a helpful template for you to voice your frustrations and hatred. Okay. Like, what's that going to get you at the end of the day? Like Mazel Tov. And it's just like, when countries turn against their Jews, and they inevitably falter afterwards. It's not because the Jews were such great economic engines, although sometimes that is the case. It's that once you get in the habit of blaming others for your own problems, you are unable to fix your own problems. And that if you are going to succumb now to that same scapegoating and feel like you have to blame Israel for everything that's wrong in your life, ultimately that's going to be to your own detriment, but Israel is going to be just fine. And I guess that's sort of I'm over it statement of it. And I'm sorry if that lacks empathy, but I think that's my realpolitik of the moment.
I I hear you. I I wish it was easy for me to say that. I when I hear people who are anti-Zionist, what I think I'm hearing them say is, I'm for human rights, I'm for the love of
For
humanity, I'm
equality,
for equality,
diversity,
and I'm
yes,
like, I agree with you.
yes.
I agree with
You know
you.
what country you would love if you like those things? I got a great country for you. Do you know where you can go? And last weekend we had a great gay pride event that brought in people from all over Africa and the Middle East as the only place they could go and be openly gay. I got a country for you.
Yeah, you know where you can go if you are concerned about human rights, you know where there's like the greatest human rights activists in the world?
Israel.
Yeah.
They were the ones flying kites over Gaza as signs of peace before October the 7th. It was you go to Nativ Asara and you can go there to the wall, the peace wall, and put ceramics in, which is an art installation of a open hand in peace towards the people of Gaza that we can't wait to live next to you. And when the hang gliders landed in Nativ Asara and started killing people there, that ceramic wall still stands.
Yeah, I think that this moment welcomes the conversation of nuance. I think that there is a space for redefinition or taking that definition away, or thinking about how do we make this an actual conversation and not just slogans?
Right.
Because nothing has been accomplished with that.
Right.
Really, nothing has been accomplished with that. I agree with that, and I hope that this moment brings actual depth.
So the question I have is, do either of us have the actual bravery to say that when entering into this debate, someone say, "Well, you're a Zionist," to stop saying, "Well, yes, of course I'm a Zionist because X, Y, and Z," but say, "No, I'm not a Zionist. I don't believe that it should be litigated. A country exists, and
I want to hear back.
I want to try. We got to workshop this."
You know what? I think I'm brave enough to be that chutzpahdik.
Okay, I want to hear how it goes with your Brooklyn friends, and I will try this as well.
They're from Brooklyn.
Of course. Thank you for having this discussion with me about the possible retirement of a word that was very useful at a certain time, but maybe is past its prime. Maybe sometimes people will feel the same about me. On that, I want to say one last thing actually before we go is that by the time this podcast launches, I'll be in Israel with a handful of our congregants who are part of a group of around 150 from North America who are spending the week volunteering in Israel and helping to do all of the things that portray the vision that you very much have for an even more democratic and diverse and state with all the values and be with the values that we hope for it. So I can't wait to go, and I'm so excited that we have a group going from the synagogue.
May you go in peace. May you return in peace.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.